How was y'all's weekend? I saw you guys were, maybe it was last week, y'all were traveling around doing some sightseeing.
That
Yes.
was, yeah, that was related to SEO spring training. We went out a little early and enjoyed the time out there.
No, he's talking about Saturday.
Oh,
Lee, maybe you don't realize, but your wife likes to post everything you guys do.
I seem to have seen a little bit of that.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome again to another episode of SEO Fight Club. Today we're just talking about random topics and doing Q&A. So if you have questions you want to ask, just queue them up in chat. I am watching the YouTube chat for questions. And if you have topics, that's fine too. We're fine with topic suggestions. In the, kind of the latest news, we were talking beforehand about Gary Isles' announcement of the hreflang X default and wondering if he actually meant it in the context that you can index pages with it. Because if so, that's potentially an interesting new indexing methodology.
So I was going to say, so Ted, for those that, are not, because not everybody understands all of the pieces, what is the hreflang thing and sort of what is your interpretation of what he said?
Hreflang is where you can specify versions of a page that are written in different languages, and there's supposed to be an option to set a default when no specific variation is listed for, a combination of country language. And so, through some mechanism on Google's side, they use this X default as a way to canonicalize in some way, or a way to discover the official page of the original. And so, I'm not sure what they do on their end because they never give us the source code. But, the headline specifically states hreflang X default can help feed URLs to Google it might not otherwise see. And so that, to me, that's on the nose. That's an indexer, right?
Mm-hmm.
The weird part about this is normally they talk about they talk about a technology, but they leave it to you to read between the lines on it. The odd part about this one is Gary did the reading between the lines part for us, so we wouldn't miss that subtext. And so now it's so on the nose, it's like, did this really happen? And is this really true? Can we use simple PHP and the X default attribute in hreflang in order to build an indexer that gets Google to process pages? I don't know. We got to test it out now, don't we?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah, if they're being totally honest and transparent, then what we potentially have here is a new methodology to index pages. But it seems to me that it might be it might be something that's on a time frame. Maybe they don't process it in real time. Maybe who knows. Maybe the article misunderstands what he meant and the title isn't accurate to the state of what it does. I mean, we just don't know until we test. But it's unusual that Google would throw a bone like that. That is uncharacteristic. What do you think of Google leaking its own secrets?
History has had me skeptical. I mean, is it something that they actually leaked, or is it something that is intended to get us to take actions that are in their best interest, a la, Core Web Vitals in the past and some of the other things that they've leaked just to get SEOs to move in a particular direction.
So you think they have an hreflang problem, and by doing this announcement, they can trick the public into fixing their mess?
Perhaps.
Interesting. The other thing that was interesting was Google came out with a generative app builder, which is really quite impressive, I think, conceptually. I haven't played with it at all. But the idea is you upload like PDFs of content, whether it's your website or quarterly filings from the SEC or whatnot, hundreds of megabytes of text and text files. And then you can have a conversation with the text. So effectively, what this generative app builder does is it makes it point and click to make these kinds of applications like super simple. And it does the training for you on your data. So you don't need to have the technical know-how to do your own training, the micro training of an existing model. Like they're in theory doing this on your behalf behind the scenes. And it's potentially a way to jailbreak the AI to create content on whatever the hell you want, because you train it with the content. So all of a sudden you can get generative content on anything, right? If you train it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's impressive. And so thinking about all the different ways that you can do cool stuff and amazing exploits with that, I mean, that's a cool piece of power. So kudos to Google on doing something potentially that is putting productivity and utility in our hands. I mean, that's also kind of uncommon. So this Gen App Builder technology is going to be located on Google's cloud infrastructure. So if you want to learn about it, you'll probably have to go there to learn more about it. Look, there's when you get to the announcement page about it, there's an animated graphic that shows someone uploading 10Q filings to build an app, and you get a choice where you can build a search app on the 10Q filings, or you can build a chat app for the 10Q filings. It's pretty cool. I'd at least take a look at it. It looks nice for those of us who may not be up to downloading Alpaca and training our own models, because that is often a bit more than most of us want to get into.
On a related note, the article that everybody was sharing earlier this week or end of last week was about the leaked Google memo about AI development. And it seems that they're concerned that the open source AI platforms are developing at a much more rapid pace than it is happening within Google and within Microsoft's OpenAI as well. And the concern is that those platforms have narrowed the gap utilizing some novel solutions to AI training problems, some of which they said, had training stuff that's been done with data sets for $100 to $300 to train the model that performs as well or nearly as well as the current ones that are trained on a fraction of the web. So that was interesting to think about how fast that's and that they're worried about the open source stuff.
Yeah, I've worked in environments where there were lots of PhD computer science people, And the first thing I notice when I'm in those environments is how often they're so smart they can't be bothered by stupid ideas. And they constantly have a failure of imagination because they get channeled down the academic literature and they cannot depart from it because it looks too tinfoil.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you open up these technologies to open source, there is somebody out there who just doesn't have the time to deal with that crap. And they're going to try the thing that is so stupid simple it can't possibly work and see what happens. And that's how they're finding all this shit is internally, they have massive amounts of failure of imagination, and out in the public source, people are willing to try everything and see what sticks. And so you get these amazing emergent solutions and capabilities. So you're right. If you can't be open-minded, you can't innovate quickly. Welcome to reality. So yeah, open source is gonna kick your butt because more people being more open-minded and willing to try more things are gonna make more discoveries.
Mm-hmm.
Surprise!
The other thing that intrigued me about that was that they're asserting that some smaller training sets, but more carefully curated, more targeted, cleaner, can produce models that are very, very high performing without having to have the massive data sets.
Yeah, I want a model completely trained on SEO as we know it in our corner of the industry. Because then when you can have conversations with a knowledge base that we agree with, it becomes more interesting. Because I don't want the vanilla, Google shill white hat only SEO response. I want the technical SEO who knows how to rank shit response. Mm-hmm. That interests me a lot. And I think a lot of people would really like having those conversations with the bot that get the actual knowledge that gets things to rank, that solves actual technical SEO problems. And the generalized training set that only does the Google shill talking points, that's not a useful content set. That's the worst possible SEO content you could generate is the stuff it was trained on. So yeah, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, but it intrigues me in terms of, like, I started thinking about little models that if I had a little data set for this or a little data set for that, that might be interesting to build, even potentially building a model that, for example, takes a crap ton of Quora data and investigates it in ways that we're currently not doing.
Yeah, like you could probably give it a rule set, like some of the prompt engineered, like the really engineered prompts, not the shit that people just do off the cuff, but the ones that are really detailed, specific, have rule trees for how to do the process, how to do the analysis. Those things, yeah, if you did that for a data set, you could do that for keyword research. You could do that for finding outliers and exploring them. You could do that to create snapshots of tactics in play for a keyword. You could do that to figure out for tactics overlooked for a keyword. If I go into this keyword, what tactics are not in play so I can get ahead easily? Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you could do. And that's part of the reason why that Google Gen app builder is so interesting, is because you upload the data it uses. And so that all by itself makes it, really interesting conceptually.
Right.
All right. Looks like we got some questions rolling here. Let's take a look. What are your thoughts on finding SEO clients on LinkedIn? I'm finding it very difficult. Yeah, it's really hard to cold call people to get business. And so there are easier ways than that. What I used to do when I was just getting started, I would go to the white hat SEO category and black hat world, and I would spend 30 minutes every morning just honestly and genuinely helping people. And what I found is when I was successful in helping someone, they would often come around and say, hey, I really like your vibe. I think we'd work well together, and I obviously need help. Can I hire you? And so just helping people in some public place, it's a great way to get business. And the other thing you want to do is you don't want to grow too fast. So when you're an SEO consultant, just a single person, not a full-fledged agency, you tend to grow your roster too quick. You'll underprice your service and you'll get a massive roster, and you'll start dropping the ball and delivering poor service to your roster. So what you need to do is make sure that you price your service appropriately so that you can keep your roster small and manageable. I would say that most beginning SEOs would struggle at 5 clients. So you probably want a roster of 3 clients. And if you're charging $2 to $3 grand, you're going to be making close to 6 figures a year on that. And then you can have a waiting list, just make it a newsletter waiting list. And anyone who might be interested in getting on your waiting list, they'll be on this opt-in newsletter. And if you lose someone on your roster, or if you can handle more capacity and grow slowly, you can email the list and say, hey, I have an opening if you're still interested. And that way you have a pipeline of interested people. You have warm leads, people who you've already helped and know a little bit. You understand their problem a little bit and they want to hire you. And if you do good work, a lot of these are going to be small businesses who are friends with other small businesses. And they say, hey, I found this guy who did really good work for me. You should use them too. And so the referral network is how most SEOs get good clients. What do you think, Lee?
I think I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday who one of the methods that they use to get new clients is they offer an audit. And I said, oh man, I absolutely personally hate that, because what is an SEO audit? I've seen lots of these things and I have yet to find 2 that are similar. So everybody has their own definitions. For some people, it's simply a quick run a screaming frog and, output it in a certain way. And some people, like I've had the good fortune of seeing some of yours, Ted, which are these mammoth documents and supporting information to allow people to implement stuff with it. Most of what I see is that everybody uses the same techniques. They suffer from, the failure of imagination that you're always talking about. But I see people oftentimes they'll do things like they'll join local BNI groups, because you can pick up 1, 2, 3 people there, fairly quickly just by being the SEO in those groups. I've seen people go to specialized conferences. So if there's a plumbing conference in your hometown, you just go there and work your way around and, meet different people and say, hey, I do, marketing services for plumbers. And, there's just all sorts of different ways. If you just think outside the box of some places where your potential market is, that the normal SEOs aren't inundating with their own, everybody's a free audit or free consultation or, whatever the hell it is, that they're doing, because yours sounds like everybody else. SEOs do not differentiate themselves in terms of services, which is why somebody trying to charge $3,000 is beat out by somebody who's charging $500 because to the prospective client, those two people are doing the exact same thing. So why would I pay 6 times as much? So I would just get creative with it and try to think about how other industries attract their particular customers and maybe model some of those things that are not what everybody else is doing.
Excellent. All right, so let's see. In your opinion, what specific skills / knowledge a decent advanced SEO must have? Can you list specific topics? In addition to doing testing and using Cora, I'm looking for the gaps. Yeah, you need the fundamentals. So, you need to know how to FTP files to the server. You might even want to know how to configure a web server or to configure PHP. You might need to know a little bit of PHP to be able to edit those files. You might need to know JavaScript and CSS. You might need to have a little bit of design knowledge. You might need to know a little bit about how businesses work and business units and how not all of the tasks you need to accomplish might not reside with one person or group. You might have to talk to multiple people in groups. There's a lot there, and it really goes from the very basic to more technically advanced than you can possibly imagine. But there are viable careers at all points in that scale, from the most basic to the most technically advanced. There's plenty of success and opportunity for everyone. And so you just need to know your limits too. So you need to know the types of problems you can solve well, and you need to know the types of problems you can't. And you need to have the industry contacts to be able to refer someone to where they can get the help they need if you can't do it. And so the problems come into play when you think, I'm the SEO, I must solve all problems for them, when you know full well you can't solve all problems. So, know your skills, know what you can deliver well, and be honest when you can't. And you'll probably do just fine in the industry. But always keep learning and be skeptical. Like, it pays to test, even in small ways. If there is some fundamental piece of SEO that somebody says works or doesn't work, but it's just simple and fundamental, test it. Then you have an answer that is undeniable, that you have proven to yourself. There is no guru on the planet who can say it in such a way that it is as good as you proving it for yourself. Lee, any thoughts?
Love that answer. One of the things that I've been asked and thought about on multiple occasions is doing an intro to SEO course. Beyond just the standard, 5 videos out there. Search engine optimization seeks to do a page, and you've got on page and off page, and here's your certificate. The problem is that there's 20, 30 different specialties within that, and how do you cover all of the basics of all of those things? You can't know all of that. It's just not possible to be an expert in all of that. So, like you talk about, I've just talked about the Rolodex theory. I got things that I know very, very well, and I have people that I know who know the things that I don't know very, very well. So if I encounter one of those problems, I can reach out and get some help, on those particular things. And my colleagues do the same thing. They'll reach out to me for a consult on things as well. And that's how you make it through all of this stuff, because you can't know every single thing. And even if you do happen to know even your specialty very well, Google changes it all the time. So what you knew yesterday might not be true today if Google's updated something. So
yeah,
I loved your answer.
All right. Ted, can you explain more about sidebar and footer links? How do you approach that? You mentioned them recently and that you've seen good results. Well, recently I've changed from just sidebar and footer links to sidebar and footer supplemental content. So I recommend, and this is totally bizarre and down the rabbit hole, I know, people. I recommend you read the Search Quality Raters Guidelines.
I'm sorry, what? Are you feeling well?
I know it's coming from me. What crazy world we're in. But specifically, you can just like jump around the document, do a find for supplemental content, and read all the passages on what Google thinks about supplemental content and what they view supplemental content is. And then realize that you do not have to SEO the main content of the page. That's optional. You can rank the entire page from the supplemental content, and the supplemental content can be in sidebars and footers or at the bottom or in a little box or, whatever it needs to be. And so when you fully and properly understand that, it is liberating, because now your CRO for human beings and your SEO for ranking can stay in their own lanes. Imagine that. You don't have to put 500 keywords in your CRO text. You don't have to do that. It's optional. Think about that. All right. So I'll leave that one there. Do you have any additions to that?
I think I'll just take on the link building side. One of the things people are afraid of is, footer links, site-wide footer links. I would just say one of the things that you can take a look at very quickly is go to CNN.com and look at their footer. Look at what they're doing to spend authority across multiple parts of that site and multiple other sites, other brands that they own, and it goes back to if they can do it, why can't I? People are always afraid of those things. And sidebar links is just another way of linking pages to other relevant pages on the site. There's a lot of different ways to implement that. There are things like, yet another related post plugins and things like that allow you to configure and link to relevant content, or you can do some custom dev work there. Basically, that's sort of the thing, and most people are afraid to do that because they're afraid of too much exact match or too much of whatever. But there's some good examples of it out there on some major sites.
Yeah, good point. Don't forget to look, when you go to Amazon, go to Walmart, go to Home Depot, go to Blue Nile, look at the product and category upselling widgets on the pages, because those are also internal linking schemes, and they're clever and relevant, and they're supplemental content. It's white hat. All right. Let's see. Google thinks that keywords A and B are synonyms and shows very similar search results. I disagree and want to rank different pages for these. Any tips? You have to take it on a case-by-case basis. And I am inclined to agree with you, but it's not always the case, or at least it's not always obviously the case. So the interesting distinction I take between Seattle Plumber and Plumber Seattle is they're slightly different in websites. They're mostly the same, but they're slightly different. And the ordering is what's largely different, is the order, things shuffle. And I think what is shuffling in the order is the portion of the ranking score attributed to the exact match. Because Seattle Plumber and Plumber Seattle have a different exact match context. And that would result in the order shifting largely. You'd largely pull the same documents because Google is a broad match system, and Seattle and Plumber and Seattle Plumber and Plumber Seattle are all going to trigger on these same relevancy scales. But the order will largely shuffle because of that exact match context. And because of that, I like to look at it both ways. And not only do I look at it both ways, I like to go to Google Trends and figure out, how do people think? Do people think in terms of Seattle plumber, or do people think in terms of plumber Seattle? Because if there is a preferred exact match context, that's where the best targeting opportunity is. And so I would want to make sure I cover the best opportunity first. What do you think, Lee?
Well said. I have nothing to add to that.
All right. Let's see. 1 year ago, I renamed and 301 redirected a page. No backlinks. All internal links point to the new URL, have a canonical tag. To this day, Google prefers the old URL. So we've seen this, like I've triggered this site-wide on thousands of pages, and man, what a nightmare. You change the URLs and you think you did the domain migration or the website migration to a new platform, and they changed the URL structure. You think you did it right, but you see old URLs and new URLs fighting in the search. And it lasts like 10 months and into perpetuity if you never figure it out. Man, what a nightmare. And it is hard and painful to fix. That's the bad news. The good news is it's fixable, but you have to get super strict about the URLs. So when this happens, when old and new fight in the search results, it's because you left traces behind. So somewhere in your website navigation, somewhere in your content links, somewhere in your RSS feed, somewhere in your sitemaps, somewhere in your ad campaigns, somewhere in your Google merchant feeds, somewhere you have the old URLs living on. And Google is finding them, and Google has history for them, and those have page rank, and oftentimes more page rank. So if you don't find all of those mentions of the old URLs within the ecosystem, then they get rediscovered and continue living on and competing with the new URLs. So you need to go find those throughout the entire ecosystem, in the robots.txt file and all the sitemap files, everywhere. And in the content links, somebody hard-coded a link in the product description. You need to find those. And then once you get those all unified to the new ones, and you double check that you have all the 301s for the old ones properly handled, then you should start seeing it slowly clean up and resolve in Google, and they'll all eventually land on the new one. But until you get that cleanup work done, they are going to fight it out in search, and it can go on forever if you don't get it all cleaned up. Lee, have you ever fought this?
No, I've actually only seen it a couple of times. And the first time that I saw it, I reached out to you and said, what the hell? And you gave me the bad news that you just gave them. So, you had to go through and find, the places where it was hard coded, or, the sitemap didn't update, or, something along those lines. And once we got that cleaned up, it was fine. But it was a pain in the butt for a long time.
Yeah, you got to be super strict about URLs, because if you change even one letter in a URL, you got to remember that Google is a URL-based system. Your permanent record in Google's memory is keyed in on the URL. So when you change one letter in the URL, you're throwing away the permanent record and starting anew. And that's why it's so painful to keep changing the URLs with these website redesigns that businesses want to do every 2 years. And it's wildly unpopular when you're the person internally being the URL, bad guy, saying, no, we can't change the URL, but you're actually the hero of the business because you're trying to protect the organic revenue. But man, politically in the office, people get to know you as the no guy. And that's not a comfortable role to play. It's politically unpopular. So, I think you just got to lay it out to the business and let the business say no, so that maybe you don't get fired for being the no guy, because I know I've done that before. But yeah, proceed with caution. But all right. Let's see. Where are we? All right, here we are. Had FAQ schema on 10 pages. Google showed FAQs on the SERPs. Congratulations. Well done. Added FAQs in one batch to 100 other pages. Google stopped showing all the FAQs for the domain. What happened? Well, that to me sounds MC4 like. So you were a one-trick pony, and Google eventually said, hey, you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and so we're going to stop letting that thing count. So normally that implies that you're neglecting other categories of ranking signals, and you need to figure out what levers you haven't been pulling and diversify. So I wouldn't rush to undo it. I would consider the fact that you tried too hard on one set of triggers and try to diversify some other triggers. What do you think, Lee?
I think there's another possibility here. Something that Google has said in the past when they analyze a page is they're looking for the unique content on a page. So things like your navigation, any sort of sidebar, footer stuff, they tend to weight that less when evaluating what the content of a page is about. And it seems to me that a lot of times I see people using the same FAQ schema across multiple pages on a site. And if it becomes viewed as templated content across multiple pages, then maybe Google is reluctant to show it in the SERP.
That's a good point. If you convert it into boilerplate and there's a system to identify and ignore boilerplate, that would be catastrophic for that. But we don't know what it is. You will have to test solutions to identify the problem. And whatever solution invokes the cure is likely, it's likely the culprit. All right, so let's see. How do you put content in the source code, hidden content? Do you use schema? Well, Terry Samuels is famous for ranking a page for a real keyword using nothing but schema, no content. So we do know that schema is wired into the Google ecosystem that definitively prove that fact. So yeah, you could use schema, you could do cloaking, you could do it in a number of ways. There's a number of theories that anchor text in the context of pages linking to the page. For a long time, many years ago, eBay was famous for ranking for a keyword they didn't use on their page. It was the first example of such a thing. eBay was ranking for online auctions without saying online auctions on their homepage. And it was because all of the backlinks, the anchor text said online auctions, and that's what kind of kicked off the anchor text craze. So yeah, there's a number of methodologies of doing it. There are some simple ways to cloak using only HTML, so you don't have to get fancy with CSS and JavaScript and stuff. We have an episode of Fight Club on the simple HTML cloaking zones. One of my favorites is the details tag. So if you want to look at the details tag, it's a pretty cool one. Any thoughts, Lee?
Yeah, a lot of HTML tags have the ability to add the attribute hidden equals true, and when you do that, it basically just makes the content there but not visible on the page. So you can investigate that, which tags have that attribute, and then go and test and play with a bunch of those.
In what situation should I use the brand name in anchor text? Well, it depends on your style and philosophy of SEO. I don't think you should shy away from using the brand in appropriate places. So using the brand mention and the title attribute or alt attribute of the website logo makes a lot of sense. Using it in footer links to identify the creator of the content, things of that nature, totally fine. But just note that I tend to prefer when the home page is the primary target for brand related searches. And the reason I like to do that is for attribution. So when you have lots of channel marketing, so for example, TV ads or social media campaigns, when you have those things and they're successful, they tend to also come with a spike in brand searches because people don't immediately click those things, but they remember you for later and want to find you later. So they search for your brand and click on what comes up. And so normally with successful channel marketing, you get elevated brand searches. So SEOs cannot claim 100% of the credit for brand keywords because it's messy because of that effect from channel marketing. So if you want to get good attribution, then you want to typically SEO inner pages where SEO is the primary reason they would ever get traffic for a keyword. And so you get your best attribution, your best bragging rights for organic on inner pages and not the home page. And so if you're loading up the home page with all your SEO keywords and they're doing multi-channel marketing, well, now you're all mixed up on your attribution. And it's going to be hard to claim credit. You're going to be fighting with the other marketing people. And so, yeah, I try to avoid that. But yeah, food for thought. What do you think, Lee?
I think that I haven't done any testing specifically to have a tested data approach to, what's the optimal anchor text, mix, theory, ratios, whatever. But what I can tell you is where I've seen it go awry is Google is very good about detecting outliers. So if I started Lee's Plumbing today and I did a press release and the press release had, anchor text for Lee's Plumbing, something like that, and I had 500 of those, that wouldn't be unusual. That would be something that a lot of small businesses would do to get out of the door. And if I changed the anchor text rather than using my brand, if I changed it to, Oklahoma City Plumber, where I live, that would not be unusual to have something along those lines. But if I fired up a tool and all of a sudden got 1 million, whether they were brand links or exact match anchors or something else, that stands out and that tends to get ignored algorithmically. So, most of the different theories that I've seen about anchor text and ratios and stuff like that, all of them will work as long as you don't go too far on one. And we don't know exactly where that line is, but you can look at what your competitors are doing to see sort of, get you some guidelines on that.
Yeah, and as an SEO, I like to handle the brand name properly, but I don't aim to take credit for its success in organic. So it's my least favorite mandatory SEO keyword. How often does volatility tool show different results due to Google testing as opposite to difference due to different index nodes? Any idea how to check? Well, that's a loaded question. So I'm going to start by describing the data I have and not answering your question specifically. So the data I have from the volatility tool that I created is that time sharing and position testing, as well as keyword cannibalization, as well as split testing of title text and split testing of summary text, are amazingly common. It's like, it might not be 100% of searches, but it's damn near 100% of searches have that type of volatility. So it's everywhere. And it's just about every search too. So you can expect the chaos every single time. Now, your question is specific to how do I attribute the chaos? Can I say it's definitively Google testing something, or could it be like the difference between server A and server B and the time it takes Google to propagate data changes out to the different servers? Well, I can't definitively say the mechanism on Google's end that causes the chaos. All I can do is measure the amount of the chaos. Lee, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's a hard one because all we can do is look at the aggregate. And one of the things that makes it even more challenging, something that I did at the last conference where I presented at, is I ran a keyword, I ran the, for, what was it, 20 results, standard volatility report with 20 results, and you get to see all the bars and stuff like that. But I ran a dozen of those back to back to back. So within about a 35 minute period, I had a dozen different volatility reports for the same keyword. And as I cycled through them, you could see the changes in volatility over a few minutes, from report to report. So there's really no way to determine, without some massive large scale polls and probably more data than is that's pulled in the volatility report, at least what's displaying, to even begin to try to parse that out. What's a server level effect? What's a title test effect? What's a meta description effect? What are some of the other things that might be in there? What are new pages being tested effect? I mean, it's a monster. So I'm not even sure you can do that with this particular tool, even if it were modified.
Yeah, and I haven't seen a tool like it built to a higher standard. So like, I haven't seen that innovation, but the world's a big place. Maybe somebody has something I don't know about. Let's see. How do you use the volatility tool except for reports and fixing titles and descriptions? This is a great question, because there's a quality that's measured in the volatility tool called time sharing. And what time sharing is what percentage of searches does a URL appear in? So you have a keyword Seattle plumber, and you have one specific search result that's only appearing in, say, 10% of searches. That time sharing, anytime it's less than 100%, is a really strong indicator that a website has technical SEO problems. So I use it whenever I engage with a new customer or new pages. I like to run the volatility tool, and I'm specifically looking for the green 100% in time sharing. Because if they have a bunch of red time sharing percentages, I know I have a project before the ranking project. I need to fix some technical SEO issue that is causing that page to not appear in 100% of searches. And get this, The work you do to fix a technical SEO issue is different work than what you're going to do to rank the page. They are two different projects. So if you quote a price to get to the finish line of ranking the page and you're unaware of the technical SEO work you need to do, you just basically volunteered to do two projects for the price of one. And it's going to take a lot more time than one project would normally take. So you need to diagnose these situations before you agree on pricing. And not only that, you need to manage the expectation as well, because that technical SEO problem is a pre-existing condition. And that client is going to put you over the hot coals because you're going slower than they hope because they came in the door with a pre-existing mess. So you need to know about that so you can say, hey, whoa, you got this big, messy problem here, and we need to fix that before we can even attempt to rank the page. And that's going to take time, and I need to charge you to fix it because that's a problem. You know, you need to frame it properly so that you're not on the hook for a mess that was never yours to begin with. And so I use the volatility tool to save my ass with those clients because that wasn't my problem coming in the door. I'm happy to help you fix it. I have to charge you to fix it, but you're coming with a pre-existing nightmare that I am willing to help you with. And then once we fix that technical SEO issue and get you appearing in 100% of searches for the keyword, now we can rank the page. And what's cool is when I see the green 100%, then I'm relatively confident that when I apply on-page SEO, I'm going to get quick turnarounds. I'm going to get 24, 48-hour ranking boosts and see that page move up. But if I see that I got a red time sharing percentage, I'm not confident that you're going to get fast turnarounds. I think the opposite. It's going to be a grudge fest. And so I want to know that going in. And so it's a part of every audit I do, and I try to do it pre-quoting a price because I want to quote the right price. I want to quote the right time frame for managing expectations. How do you use it, Lee?
Well, I think, and this is going to feel weird because I hate to be the glass is half full, but situations like that are actually pretty cool because if you have a whole bunch of pages on the site that are appearing, you know, in 10% of the searches and you fix the technical problem, you've just got them appearing in 100% of the searches now, and you've 10x the traffic on the site if rankings don't move. You know, so you can get a bigger gain from fixing that technical problem than all the on-page and off-page that you would do later on sometimes. And those are nice wins. Those are really, really nice wins. Beyond the obvious ones, looking at some of those, one of the things that you can tend to see is, you know, how difficult the SERP is to win sometimes. If you see that the top 20 sites are not having any volatility whatsoever, and the volatility is below that, that means usually those are pretty dialed in. Whereas if I see everything from 1 to 100 having volatility, typically those are easier SERPs to win. Cannibalization, you always want to check for that. But sometimes simple things like people will sit there and say, I optimized, you know, page B and I optimized it for this keyword, but Google keeps showing page A. What do I have to do? Well, you can run the volatility tool using a site colon search for that domain and that keyword and see if Google, even on your own domain, thinks that page A is better optimized for that keyword than page B is. And it could be not the on page, it could be, you know, simply the amount of links, internal or external, that it has coming to it. So you can identify problems like that where you've done this wonderful thing and you think Google ought to be picking this page and it's not. You can identify the culprits. And the nice thing is if you actually identify the culprits in that way, you can take all of those other pages that are ranking ahead of you in that site colon search and link to the page that you desire, and typically move it above all the others, giving it some nice relevant backlinks. So those are some of the ways.
Nice. Yeah, good points. Is doing SEO for Magento significantly different than other platforms? What are the restrictions and leverage points? Well, the main problem with ecom platforms is their custom development when you really want to make significant changes to how SEO functions site-wide. So, sometimes it can be tricky to get things built in systematically. It's actually easier to do it for Magento than it is to do it for Shopify. And the cool thing about, Magento systems is you often get access to the web server log files, where on Shopify, you don't get access to them. They both run the risk that when there's major platform updates, it can wipe out a lot of what you've done if you're not careful about it. So the hazard is they force you to upgrade to the latest version, and a lot of your customizations vanish. So that's the scary part, is you can be reset back to zero when you're doing platform SEO and there are big, massive updates. But in general, it's all technically possible. So you can tune the pages, you can tune the templates, you can create widgets that do internal linking, all the same playbook is still in play. There's just usually nuances to the CMS that you're working with, and nuances to the updates to the CMS. Any thoughts, Lee?
No, I've never played with the platform, so the only thing I could offer is whatever ChatGPT tells me when I ask it.
Yep. And that's actually not a terrible thing. There's a lot of knowledge in doing those types of things out there, and ChatGPT often has some decent ideas. Just don't use ChatGPT for security. That's where people make their biggest mistakes. Let's see. Using PPC to get SEO clients is a bit funny, isn't it? What do you think? Is it a viable method? Well, it gets you up top, and oftentimes people looking to buy, they'll actually go to the ads first. Who's investing in solving this problem for me? And so it's not that people are saying, well, who's good at SEO? I'll go to the pay-per-click ads. They're actually saying who is professionally offering a service and investing in the marketing of that service, because I'm looking for an existing solution that's been vetted on past customers and is a growing concern. So they're kind of filtering by how well established the solution is by going for the ads first. And they're going for something that is probably more industry accepted than, what is some invention somebody made and hasn't been adopted industry-wide. So, it's kind of, I don't know. I think there's a persona, a marketing persona that would go to the ad in those cases. And so I would imagine it works with a certain type of customer for a certain type of service. I'd imagine it works very well. What do you think, Lee?
I think it's two numbers. It's what's the lifetime value of a customer that comes in, via the pay-per-click route, and what's your cost of acquiring that customer, and are you happy with those two things? I mean, any method that you use boils down to what's the most effective use of my resources for getting, clients, whether it's pay-per-click or SEO or, appearances, speaking, local groups, whatever it is, you've got an investment in that. You've got to get a reasonable return. So,
let's see, SEO, beer and barbecue, waiting for the show announcement, man, giving you crap. He's making an SEO show, and that's what the SEO beer and barbecue is the name of the show. Waiting for it to launch. Give us an update because we'll promote it.
Yeah, didn't he tell us about that show like 9 years ago? It feels like.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
It's
Come
hard
on,
to get
man.
started, but I know from experience you need a good kick in the ass to get started. So I'm giving you a kick in the ass. Get started. You got to start. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to exist. And then there's a promise that you'll improve upon it over time. And that's all people care about.
Don't make me come to Carolina, man. Don't make me come to Carolina.
Yeah. He says, rank for good terms that bring in clients, ? And we all know how most SEOs feel about city SEO marketing, and that it gets you, the tire kickers. They're not great leads. They're people that want to differentiate on price, and that's not good for business. And the quality of the customer when you do that can be lower. So, just know that works. It gets you leads, but maybe not the best leads. And so I know a lot of top-notch SEOs that don't want, SEO Los Angeles as a keyword because it doesn't bring in the right clientele. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, again, it's a similar thing to the last one. It just depends on, every activity that you do to bring them in. They have certain value. They're each method of bringing clients in, some have more valuable clients than others. So you just have to evaluate it on each one of the pipelines that you have coming in. What are the metrics? What's the time, the expense, and the return for each one?
So there's a question. Do you send multiple links from a single tier 3 site to multiple tier 2 sites that you control? Well, I tend to think of it at a page level and not a site level. So I'm going to reframe your question to a page level because I don't even know how to answer it at a site level. So from a single tier 3 page to multiple tier 2 pages, sure, why not? I mean, normally I wouldn't. I try to focus the lens a little more, but organically, naturally, pages have many links and they link to many places. So I think in terms of being natural, that would be a very natural pattern. Now, do I have definitive proof that that's a best practice? No, I don't, but I'm just thinking logically about what occurs in nature, what we see in nature, and I think that would resemble what we see in nature. What do you think, Lee?
I like your answer.
All right, let's see. So Ted, for plumber Seattle, Seattle plumber, and plumbers in Seattle and Seattle plumbers, would you try to rank the same page for all? It depends. If I get a feel that Google is treating those like synonyms, I'd be more inclined to do it all from one page. If I get the feel that Google is treating them more like different searches, then I'd be more inclined to break them out. And I would set up a test where I'd put them up as separate pages and I'd watch what Google does with them. Am I getting cannibalized with them? Or are they ranking independently for these terms without cannibalization? And I would kind of let that be the deciding factor as to whether or not they need to be merged or they can exist independently. Because if there's no cannibalization, then they're different searches. Sorry, that's just it. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I think there's one thing that we've noted in the past, like plumber in Seattle and plumbers, the plural in Seattle, can sometimes be treated differently, where the plural tends to attract more directories and those sort of listings, whereas the singular tends to act as show more
Discrete
individual
business.
businesses, discrete
Yeah.
businesses.
Yeah, so it all depends on Google's understanding. So as much as we want to impose our better knowledge of synonyms, if Google doesn't have that knowledge, it doesn't matter. Let's see. Will you get an issue if you get a press release in foreign website? I don't think so. I think that happens in the world. Xbox has a new game or a new version of the Xbox. It's going to be announced in multiple places in multiple languages. And yeah, I don't see it being a big deal. Let's see, would you please review affiliate sites and say what they are doing well and what they are doing badly? Well, I will say this, that's an interesting topic, and so I'll consider it. But I don't really believe in bad SEO anymore. I know there are specific things that are bad, but in general, people aren't doing bad shit. In general, what we're seeing is incomplete SEO. So I go to a website that isn't ranking well, and it's not that the SEO that was done on it is bad. It's that it was incomplete. They didn't do enough of the things in enough of the right areas. They went part way, and part way wasn't good enough. The SEO they might have done was good for the part they did, but it was incomplete as to what the page needed to rank well. And so I kind of look at SEO more in the context of, is it complete or is it incomplete? And what I tend to find is most SEOs in the world are out there doing incomplete SEO. Not that it's bad, it's just not everything they needed to do. What do you think about bad SEO, Lee?
I think I agree with what you're saying, but I'm also going to point out on the other side that you can rank pages without doing everything that you know how to do, going back to sort of the minimum viable model. Just because everybody does, these things with their page and these things with their backlink profile doesn't mean you need to match your competitors on every single thing. Sometimes you can do well on a lot of different factors, and that's good enough to get you ranking where you want to be. So.
All right, let's see. How do you calculate clean keyword density in the HTML tag, add more percentage? All right, so keyword density is on a spectrum, and it's an apples and oranges problem. No two people calculate keyword density the same way. So for example, in the keyword density percentage you calculate, do you include the title tag in the words and matches? Well, what about the meta description? Well, most SEOs would say, yeah, meta description, that's important. We'll include that in the density. What about the meta keywords? Oh no, meta keywords, nobody does that anymore. We don't include any. All right, so now you're excluding words. Well, what about image alt text? Oh yeah, we'll include image alt text in the density calculation. What about title attributes for the tooltips? Well, no, we won't include it. So based on this long survey of what you choose to include and exclude, you're basically making a new formula for keyword density that no one else in the world. There's about 15 million different ways to calculate a keyword density. So we have a way of describing the spectrum. We have a raw density where you include all words and all matches from everywhere on the page, most inclusive side of the spectrum. And then there's a clean keyword density where you eliminate the head block, you delete the styles, you delete the scripts, you delete the HTML comments, you delete the HTML tags, and then from the content text that's left over, you calculate a density. When most SEOs talk about keyword density, they mean something on the clean end of the spectrum, where it's the most exclusive way of calculating it. And so when you calculate a clean keyword density, you're doing just that. You're deleting the entire head block. You're deleting the HTML comments. You're deleting the scripts and the styles. You're deleting the HTML tags. And then from the content text list left over, you count words and matches. And that's how you do it. Any thoughts on density, Lee?
No, I mean, that was some of the things that we had talked about years ago. And I think even sometimes on Fight Club is that we do not know how Google's calculating keyword density. So everybody's guess is just a different guess, a different approximation. But they're all effective.
We have clues, though. We've actually made some headway into understanding Google's calculation of density. Because of will it index testing, we know what zones of the page Google does not include in keyword density. We know that keyword density in certain parts of the page will not boost a page.
Right.
We know in certain parts of the page, it will boost a page. And so because of those zoning updates of the parts of the page that Google ignores and doesn't ignore for indexing, we have insights into Google's formula. We don't have the whole formula, but we know what parts are definitely not in it.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we tested the numerator, not the denominator. So we don't know if the zones of the page where it's not included in terms of boosting, whether those terms are also included in the denominator, the word count of the page. So it's possible that two different lines of code treat the same zone differently.
Well, more testing needed, but there are clues. That's
yes.
All right. So let's see. What ecom stores are doing a good job from an SEO point of view? Well, I like aspects of different stores. And so I know a lot of people in ecom, they constantly use Amazon as the frame of reference. What is Amazon doing? What is Amazon doing? And, you know, it's not the only show in town. I also like to look at what the directory sites are doing. You know, what is Yelp doing? Because they've done some really interesting things. And I like to look at the gaming sites because what are they doing? Because they're ranking pages without text on the page. They're largely just image tokens. And think about an online store. They're largely just image tokens. So there's a lot of shareable knowledge between games and online shopping. So yeah, you know, don't just look at Amazon, but Amazon isn't bad. I mean, they have very large pages. Their average page is about 2 megabytes of source code. That's big. They have lots of upselling widgets, lots of supplemental content. So I would classify the types of widgets on the pages. Create a glossary of ecom tactics so that you can flip through a flip book of different tactics of supplemental content on the page. Do you know all the different types of widgets you could do in ecom? Have you made a glossary of that? Like that. Make your glossary of tactics. You'll be amazed at what you find on all these sites on things you can do to SEO that are outside the normal playbook. Any thoughts, Lee?
Yeah, the only thing when you get a question like that, are you talking SEO or CRO? Because, you know we can take a look at your Amazons, your Walmarts, you know, in the ecom space and kind of pick up some things that they're doing. But, you know, if you're looking at who converts the best, those might not be the models that you want to go after. So it's kind of a challenging question to look at which dimension you want the answer to come in.
Yeah, my favorite aspect of Amazon store is their link router. So go to an Amazon product page and rename the product to something funny in the URL, and then send it to a friend. Their link router is awesome for SEO because they can put any keyword in the URL they need to, and it still routes to the right product. So amazing link router for SEO at Amazon. And so, look at aspects of sites and see what they do amazing. Let's see, I've heard Clint mention using high quality bookmarks to get 25 referring domains for blog posts. Wouldn't that be a big footprint if the same accounts are used? I'd have to let Clint answer a question like that, because I don't know all the ins and outs of his specific methodology. And, I think it depends on the size of the operation you're doing. Like when I did 25 referring domains to product pages and online retail, it was, 25 to 50,000 SKUs. So, it worked great. So, I'd say if you're in the ballpark of 25 to 50,000 pages, like, I'd imagine it would work there too. I don't see why it wouldn't. And I've seen plenty of examples of it working elsewhere in the world. And so if they can do it, why can't you? It's not to say there isn't a reason why you can't do it, but it's a good question to ask. All right, Ted, you estimated that the press release links start to have an effect in 3 to 4 weeks. Is it more or less the same for all links or just press release links? I think it's all links. I think it takes about a week for a press release service to actually get the distribution out there. And then, when Google's in good operating condition, it takes Google about 3 weeks to find all of them and process them through the PageRank algorithm. So we're dealing with other people's processes and timelines here. And I find that whenever I have to touch off-page SEO, I generally have to wait about a month to call whether or not it's working or not. Any thoughts on that, Lee?
No, it's about right.
All right. Just a quick one. When you mention keyword ratio, do you mean the percentage of keyword found in the body tag or source code of a web page? When we're talking about keyword density, it's the ratio of match count to overall word count. And depending upon what parts of the page you choose to include or exclude from that calculation, you get a different formula. So it really depends on what you're trying to do and how you do it.
Right. And if you're talking about anchor text, I'm generally speaking about the percentage of brand versus naked URL versus exact match variations, generic, etc. That's those sort of ratios that can get off if one gets really, really wonky and the numbers of links get really, really high. Those can cause problems.
All right, we are 20 minutes over, and I think we'll stop here. So thank you, everyone, for participating today. Great questions, and we'll see you next week.